Ha! See, I threw the last one in to catch you off guard. Yes.
That's kind of messed up. That's really messed up. You know, my internet's been wonky for the last few minutes before we got. Is wonky a word?
It is. It is now.
Okay.
Look
yeah.
it up.
It's been going in and out. So, our guests had to deal with that, and my internet struggles down here in the, North Kakalaki. Anyway.
Didn't you have that last week too when we were with Philip?
Well, I heard last week. I get a lot of messages talking about last week. I heard it was an amazing episode, obviously, but I heard there was some expert switchboard operator that did an amazing job, and I think that you might be getting replaced.
True. Actually, I might have a replacement right here. My executive assistant for the week.
Some coding and stuff, some ninja stuff.
She is the code ninja, the code pig coding ninja. Right now, she's getting ready for fourth grade, so she's upstairs studying what she needs to do right now.
Man, you're running a tight ship there, man. Isn't it summer break? You have her working during summer vacation?
She gets breaks.
Man, I thought it was just me that you work like this.
No. So let's see. Who do we got here today? Nick here?
We'll have to see if Nick always turns in. We can count on Nick to be present. He always turns in.
So here's the question that people have been asking. Nick is late. Listening to the background. Thanks, Nick. Here's the question that people have been asking. How's the TED Talk prep coming?
So they actually added, I think it's because of Lounge with Legends, maybe had a hand in it, but they actually added a new speaker to the November 13th event here in Raleigh.
Oh,
one of our legends. I
already removed it. Is that Chief?
It is. Chief Patterson with Raleigh PD was added this week as a TEDx, here in Raleigh speaker. I just, I'm going to reach out to the chief. I'm just kind of nervous that they put me before or after her.
She is amazing. I think you got your work cut out for you. But so yours is going pretty well though, and it is a struggle because you've got your.
What's that?
I mean, it's a struggle because you think about it. You've got your one idea worth sharing. That's what TED Talks are about. So, but once again, congratulations. Keep us posted on that's coming. And as everyone knows, we are training for the Army 10 miler, straight out of Motrin. I think James probably needs a little Motrin right now.
I'm not I'm straight on Motrin.
But hey, let's talk about our guest today. Who do we have? Do you remember?
Yeah, we have, of course I remember. I think she speaks a foreign language.
She does. That's what I saw. She's a translator.
Exactly. A military translator. The best of the best. Since 2005. Did you know that? Since 2005?
I do. I'm excited. There's a lot of things that she's doing in the veteran space. We were just talking in the green room before this. James and I would say there's two parts to getting out of the military, the transition and the transformation. We focus a lot on the transformation and the mind trash and getting the imposter syndrome and the brain housing group straight, ready for your next evolution. She's on the other side, working on the transition so that you can, with the two, you can actually have that perfect PLF, that parachute landing fall once you get out. That's a reference to what color is your parachute. So I'm ready to bring her on.
I think the beauty of it is last week I had a podcaster. This week we have a podcaster. She does the podcast Lesson Learned for Vets podcast. Yep. I think I might be working on not only a switchboard replacement for you, but a actual podcast voice replacement.
There you go. We'll have to see. Next week we have another podcaster coming on. We got another one. We'll talk about him, Navy SEAL. But that'll be interesting. But let's bring her on. We've talked enough. Ready?
Let's go.
You're watching the
All right, sticky fingers. You caught me on that stuff.
Switchboard.
all the bad juju he was talking about, me being fired and everything. So welcome, Lori, and thanks for being our legend this week.
I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, I mean, we're excited. I know you've got a huge following with you and your podcast, and obviously all the work that you've done for the veterans. But just a quick background. Can you introduce yourself to the group, to the collective?
Well, sure. So many people know me as the Lessons Learned for Vets podcast host. I launched that back in November of 2020, but I've really been in this business of helping veterans transition through education and services since about 2005. And so I started volunteering out at Luke Air Force Base and have been teaching resume writing, job searching, all of the technical aspects of the transition since then. And you find me on LinkedIn. I was, try to post every week. I try to talk about the resume because nobody else really wants to talk about it. Although I do all aspects of the transition, but that's just a little bit about me.
What is it about the resume that people don't want to talk about?
Ugh, it's so painful.
Like,
who wants to talk about themselves, right?
It's like, what's the, I don't want to be braggadocious. What's the right format? All that. I know I went through that. And when you look out there, and we talk about this, transition's a process. There's
Right.
lots of resources out there, but there's also, just because it's a resource doesn't mean it's a good resource. So you can have something, it can be absolutely terrible, be a great resume for this industry, but absolutely terrible for this industry. Is that right?
Yeah, the resume is, it's very personal, right? So we're talking about ourselves, and most of us are not excited about tooting our own horn, if you want. We don't want to brag, we don't want to be boastful. We don't want to come across as arrogant. And it's like, there's so many like, do this, don't do that, because it's such a subjective thing. Resumes are like beauty. Everybody has a different opinion of what is right and what works. And so I try to focus on the content of the resume because, I think that number one, we have to have good content. It's what's on the inside that matters. And then we also have to make sure that we're writing one that can make it through that screening process. There are no evil robots out to knock you out of the running, but there are software systems out there that we have to be compatible with. So those are the things that I focus on. It's not an easy process. I think people would rather go do their taxes than write their resumes. But
wow.
I just think it's, no one's teaching it. We're not teaching it to our kids in high school and college. Like, they're not teaching it effectively when you're coming out of the military. It's just not something that anyone's teaching. And so no one really knows how to do it.
What's the number one trap that you, go ahead, James?
No, I apologize. I was just saying, I think you hit the nail on the head. When I transitioned the first time from active duty, I went down, I won't say the name of the business. I went down Yakin Road, and there was a gentleman there with a little shack, and he said, I'll write your resume. I paid him $250. I still had that resume. I sent it out, and everyone says it's the worst resume they've ever saw. So I was like, okay, that's amazing. So I think it's so important, like you said, to get the right people actually guiding you. Someone that's been doing this for a while. 2005, you've been doing it for a night, a hot minute, so exactly how to write these resumes. So
it's and that's the thing, is like there's lots of free services out there. They'll write your resume for you, and and there's so many resources, and you just got to kind of do your due diligence. And like the true test of your resume is if you send it out to a job that you're qualified for, do you get calls for interviews? And if the answer is no, you probably need to keep working on it. So
they need to call Lori. That's what they need to do.
No, don't go.
So how did you get started in this resume writing? HR background, or was it something you just had a knack for and you enjoy, or?
Yeah, it's kind of a funny story. I'm a marketer by trade. So, my career started in retail. So I don't know if anybody remembers Miller's Outpost and Anchor Blue and Juxtapose, all those stores, right? So I started as a store manager, worked my way up to the corporate office, and I was the marketing and visual presentation manager for one of their offshoot stores, Juxtapose. And then 9/11 happened. And I had just had a baby. Actually, I had a baby, 5 days after 9/11 happened. And so I was on maternity leave when that happened. And everything went a little crazy in the world of retail, kind of in the world after 9/11, but the company just didn't make it out of that. And so I was laid off, and I said, okay, I want to try something different. I want to maybe slow down a little. I don't want to go travel anymore with my baby. And so I decided I was going to teach high school. And so one of the classes they gave me was called Senior Survival. So I was teaching high school kids how to look for a job, how to write a resume, how to fill out a job application, how to balance their checkbook, all of that. And while that was the hardest year of my life, I really enjoyed teaching job search skills. So I decided to teach it to adults. And the rest is history, right? So I created a resume writing program for Maricopa County Workforce Connections here in Arizona, and just started teaching that. And then I had a second child, and I realized I would teach a 3-hour class on resume writing. It was a pretty comprehensive class, and maybe 2 people out of the 50 in the class could actually do it for themselves. I'm like, I think there might be a business here. And so started a business, and within 6 months, I had exceeded the revenue I was making, from my job at the county, and kind of haven't looked back since. And so I've been honestly in business since 2004. And but I really like teaching. Awesome. So in 2005, I called up Luke Air Force Base because I live 2 miles from the flight line. You might hear some F-35s flying over us. And so I said, hey, I really love to teach resume writing. Do you guys need any help? And they're like, sure, we don't want to teach resume writing. Come on out. And I've been volunteering out there ever since. So I go out there about at least every other month now.
Nice. Yeah. So, I mean, what you're talking about is, whether you realize it or not, you started an entrepreneurial journey early on, and then you just kind of found your way into it. And then with the coaching models, we always see 3 things. Here's your do it yourself, here's the do it with you, and here's the do it for you. And that's kind of sounds like what you've fallen into. Or not fallen, that would be, I don't want to, disparage what you've done. But it's nice when you have a calling, you can see your passion come through this. And I didn't realize that about the high school part, but it's interesting because I don't know how much similarity there is between the high school person getting out and a military service member getting out. I would think there's a lot, because we're all about to embark on a brave new adventure of transition, a new chapter. So even though I got a college education and these guys are coming out of high school, we're kind of on that same playing field of, okay, what's next? I got a resume. Now what? Why aren't the jobs coming? Well, and I think that's where your marketing background comes in, right? You're teaching people how to do that, how to market themselves.
And so, it's just like in marketing, if you don't know who your customer is, your marketing is not going to be very effective. So The same thing goes for, whether you're leaving high school or whether you're leaving the military. If you don't know what you're trying to attract, you're not going to be very effective in writing a resume. So oftentimes we write our resume, and then we decide what we want, what kind of job we want. And it's totally backwards. You've got to decide what kind of job you want first, and then write your resume, and then start your networking, and then write your LinkedIn profile. Otherwise, you're just giving a bunch of irrelevant information to an employer. So they're having to kind of dig through and find the good stuff, if you will, right? So it's really, people do it backwards, unfortunately. And
resumes are one size fit all, right?
No. Yeah, they're really not. And that's, I just did a post today about kind of the free resumes that are out there. And while they're great and they get you on paper, which sometimes is the hardest part when you're writing your resume, is like getting those first few words on the paper. But then you've got to customize it. You have to make it yours. You have to make it read like you, sound like you, targeted to where you want to go. And that's really the biggest thing about a resume is it has to be focused.
I think that last point is key, and that's the thing that people miss is it's got to be targeted where you want to go. So you've got, okay, this is my template, essentially, my perfect resume. I got everything right. Oh, now I want to go after this job, and I need to tweak it, utilizing the words that are in the advertisement, looking for somebody. I think that's some of the, we discussed a lot of that with people that were getting out transitioning service members. We teach often. We wind up teaching elevator pitch classes to people because it's same. We do it for for small businesses as marketing, but it's the same thing. Like you said, you're marketing yourself. You have to look at yourself as a product, as a solution to their problem. And I think that's something that we get wrong because we're looking at it as, oh, I needed something to solve my problem. No, turn it around, look at yourself as the valuable asset that's solving their problem and figure out how can you solve their problem.
I think you could be a resume writer. Like
he would be okay at it. He could write a little bit. He could write a little ad copy too. But I think it goes back to the point that you both are making. It's the end, right? What happens with us, especially even at the high school transition, we think that graduation is the finish line. No, it's the starting line. When I transitioned out of the military, my brain said, okay, I'm finished. It's over. I even leaned into it. I leaned forward at the finish line, but it was actually the starting point. And, planning with the end in mind, memento mori, right? Keep the end in mind. You have to do that because I think that's what gives you that laser focused mindset and get you that job that you really want.
Yeah. I think, I wish we could stop calling it a transition. I've said this before. I think you had Michael Quinn on a couple of weeks ago, and he talks about it being more of like, we call it a transformation instead of a transition. And I don't know what the right word is, but transition is like, oh, there's an end point. Like I checked the box, I got a job, I'm done. And we all know from the statistics that that's not typically how it goes.
Right.
Most veterans leave that first job within the first 6 months, and within the first year, that number goes up even more. And so it's really like you have to think about it of like what's next, and that's why I can name my education company Next for Vets, because I just want to help prepare you for what's next. And then once you get there, let's prepare for what's next after that. So that's really, I think, the important thing is like getting ready for what's next in your future. And there's nothing wrong with always looking forward to the next thing. And, the loyalty is a great trait to have. But, it's one of those things where you like getting a watch, like the gold watch and staying in a company for 20 years, it just doesn't happen anymore. So let's always be ready for that next opportunity, that next step in your career, and keep moving forward. So
I think you're hitting on something pretty important there, because James and I, we separate, getting out of the military into the transition and the transformation. The transition is the process, the classes, but it doesn't stop. Like you're saying, it continues. The transition will start, we'll go through the paperwork drill, but then also, how are you developing yourself? How are you getting ready to evolve and go to that next step? That's why we refer to it as the evolution. I think the Marines use that when they go through the crucibles and stuff. We talk about it. So it's basically you're evolving to your next phase of your life. You're moving to the next chapter. So it's an evolution. And the reason we like evolution is because you need to be better than you were yesterday. And how do you do that? Otherwise, you're going to keep looking back like Bruce Springsteen singing Glory Days. And instead, you need to look forward and figure out, how do I take what I had in the military or in high school or wherever I'm at, and now weaponize that so that it helps me in my next chapter of my life,
And you're never going to recreate it, right? You're never going to recreate your military experience. You're not going to feel that same way. You're not going to do that same thing. But how can you use those muscles that you built during your military experience, your career, to launch you forward into the next thing? And so I think that's one of the issues, is sometimes we're trying to recreate that feeling, that camaraderie, that team out in the private sector or wherever you end up. and just know it's not ever going to be the same, and that's okay.
Right.
You know, like, I think that's an important thing, is like, but you can take what you've gained and use it in so many other ways. You just have to figure out what way you want to use it.
Yeah, no, I think.
I mean, you said the same thing. Now you both said the same thing as far as when you're actually getting out, the transition is different for everyone. Everyone has a different experience with it. And that's what, we get messed up because we think it's we like to follow SOPs, right, in the military. And it's not, there's an SOP kind of, but there's going to be some deviations. You're going to have to, figure things out on your own a little bit. And you're going to have to figure out what it is that you really want to do to keep that life of meaning. Because like you said, after you get out that life of meaning, you think you might find it somewhere, and then you realize 6 months later you're leaving that job because there's no meaning there for you. So it's so important to know yourself first during this actual transformation. Yeah.
Yeah, I think to pull the thread on that a little more, James, like we have these SOPs, standard operating procedures, where we're following stuff. That's the process. But it's also good to have those battle drills. And the whole reason we have battle drills in the military is so that we roughly know how it's going to come, how it should play out. However, when something goes awry, we can call the audible. We can zig and zag however we need to still hit our objective. And we talked about that this week on our video that we posted with Eisenhower. About plans and planning, the differences between the two. Planning is everything. The plan is nothing, because no plan ever survives first contact. But you can't get there if you haven't done the due diligence in your planning to make sure, like you said, Lori, what job do I want? What do I want to be when I grow up? Now, where do I find those people that are going to help get me there so I can be in that network, be on those forums, go to that conference, and then make my vernacular sound like that, where I'm not knife handing everybody. How do you do that? Here, I got a question, Lori. So you worked with high school transition, you work with military. What's the number one challenge with each of them? Because I have an idea which one for the military, but I'm curious with you.
So funny, like when I left teaching high school and I went to teaching adults, and my husband was like, "Hey, how was your first day?" I'm like, "Well, nobody cussed at me today, but now I work with military, and so that doesn't happen. They don't cuss at me, but so I think that they really have a lot of similarities, right? A lot of times in high school, the kids like, I don't have any idea what I want to be when I grow up. And I talk to military and they're like, I have no idea what I want to be when I grow up. And so, like sometimes that's the biggest issue with transition, is that, there's not a standard. There's not a okay, so we have a checklist to get ourselves ready to get our DD Form 214, all that good stuff, right? But there's nobody like telling you, okay, now you're going to go and be this, and you're going to go and do this. And it's like the possibilities are open, and it's like you've walked into like the biggest Vegas buffet and you're so hungry and you don't know what to eat. Like, where do I start? I want to eat everything. And so it can either be an overwhelming issue, right? It could be like, oh my gosh, there's so many choices, I'm just going to shut down. Or it could be like, oh my gosh, there's so many choices, I can do anything. And I think it's like the high schooler sees that as exciting and like opportunity, where the military transitioner, especially the retiree, sees it as like, oh my gosh.
Well, not the bag.
Yeah, exactly. So I think maybe it's just a mindset, like the view that you take on it is like, do you see it as exciting and opportunity, or do you see it as scary and overwhelming?
Right.
So
yeah, no, that's a good point. It's about perspective,
mm-hmm.
And that's what we talk a lot about. This is your opportunity to reinvent yourself. You no longer have to be the infantryman or the mechanic or whatever. You have programs like Cool, like Skill Bridge, where you can go and get that job that you want when you get there. help arm yourself so you can get into those next level jobs through the training and your GI Bill. So there's opportunities, especially now in the military, from the first time I got out. So I got out twice. I think, James, you got out twice, right?
3 times if you count the National Guard.
All right, so he got out 3 times. So he's a T at this task.
The expert transitioner.
So there's the opportunity for you to look at yourself and say, what do I want to be when I grow up? And then that's like your Venn diagram. A lot of people talk about, what do I love? What am I good at? What's going to make me money? Happy spot. And now, how do I put all my focus on that, getting one of those jobs that are in a happy spot? But it's scary. It really is. If you're like James and I we did 28 years in the military as infantry and, theater level planner. And now I'm getting out and going into marketing. How do you do that? And it's just going on the other side of the table and say, how do I get there? How much of a struggle is it when you're working with transitioning service members and they say, well, I achieved this rank, therefore that equates to this in corporate? Because that doesn't ever happen, right?
No, never. No, I think that, okay. So I think it's a matter of when they get to me, like if they come to me and they say, I'm not really sure what I want to do, but I'm a lieutenant colonel, so I know that I deserve to be a CEO, right? So where I'm going to say, okay, now what you need to do is go work on some research. You need to go and figure out, like, let's pull some job postings. Let's pull some information off of ONET and see, are you qualified? Can you check all those boxes? And so I will send them off to do some research before we even move forward. Because I think there is some of that, right? Where like, I can do anything. Like I'm a jack of all trades. I'm a Swiss Army knife. I'm like, great, but a company needs a hammer to drive this nail, not a Swiss Army knife, right? So let's make you a hammer. And if you're not a hammer, then we've got to maybe change our direction. So, so that's really where I'm at, is that I'll send them off to do some research and so to really dig into it. And I'm not a counselor by any means, like that. Everybody's got to know their strengths, right? So one of mine is not counseling. I'm definitely not a career coach. I'll give you some resources. I'll send you off to do some research, but I'm like a take action kind of person, right? Like I can help you get there once you know where you want to go.
Right.
But I'm not very good at like, let's figure out who you are and what you want to be. So I'm like a strategic thinker. I'm a marketer. But so that's what I'll do is if they come to me and they're like, I think this is where I'm at. Okay, well, let's go research it first and then we'll talk about it. So
I'm going to use that terminology from this point forward, Marty, Swiss Army knife and hammer. So I'm going to definitely put that in my toolkit and use those things. Cause I mean, I think that's simple and that I can actually understand that, it speaks front to me. Yeah. I mean, that's what it's about too. And then, cause I think the ego is the problem that you probably see a lot, especially, and I like to say the rank of lieutenant colonel and about first sergeant above, right? That's where the ego starts going and getting involved with a lot of those transitions and transformations. So I could see that being, an issue. But now that I've got the hammer, you got a hammer down instead of being a Swiss Army knife. I like that. I'm going to use that from this point forward.
Yeah, that's what I would say is like, go try and drive a nail with a Swiss Army knife and see how well that goes for you. And so that's what you're doing is you're presenting yourself as like a I can do anything tool, but they don't need you to do anything. They need you to specialize. And so when you're coming at someone with a very general resume, like an overview of everything you can do, they're like, that's great, but it looks like your skills are a mile wide and an inch deep.
Right.
Like, I want to know what you specialize in. And that's really hard because you've got to let go of a lot of things on your resume that you're really proud of. Right. But if you're really proud of it, but it doesn't mean anything to the employer, it needs to go. Right.
Right.
It's like the biggest thing I can tell you right now is your resume is not about you.
Yep.
Period. Like that's not what the resume is about. It is about the employer's needs. It is about solving the employer's problems. It's about filling the needs of the employer. And so not every employer has the same needs or problems. So if you're using the same resume for every employer, you've already done yourself a disservice.
Right. I know. I absolutely agree. That's what we're saying is you got to view yourself as a viable economic product that's going to solve their problems. And in an interview, I always say STAR is great. The STAR format's great, but a story about how you're going to solve their problem is even better. So when they give you that question, the proverbial question, what have you done, and give me an example of, turn it into a story, but focus on their problems. And that's where your research comes in of what are their pain points and how are you going to be able to solve it? Because that's what they want. Because they're really going through, they're hiring because they have a need. How do you solve that need? And you also got to think about the cost of a bad hire on their perspective. So how do you now position yourself so that they understand your credibility and how you're going to solve with them? And then how do you turn that into a connection and a conversation during your interview? Therein lies your challenge. And we recommend Crest Voss never split the difference. Turn everything into a negotiation. Try mirroring, try labeling, try to understand before you go in what you're walking into.
Yep.
So here's what I want to do.
That's why marketing for me helps me with the resume writing process. And you as a marketer, you totally understand it, right? You have to see yourself as the solution to that targeted problem. And I mean, you're absolutely right. It's all strategic marketing. That's really what the job search is about.
But that's hard for people because they're like, no, it's a job thing. I mean, if they were in the military and they worked at a McDonald's or Jack in the Box, it wasn't necessarily as labor intensive to get some of those jobs. It's not knocking those jobs, but that's not the job you're probably looking at once you transition out of the military. That literally was filling out an application, maybe not even a resume, but you're trying to just say, here I am, I'm Fry Guy. I was Fry Guy, so I'm not throwing shade on anybody doing fries. I've worked at Jack in the Box. Did the ultimate cheeseburger. But yeah, man, I did everything. I was a dishwasher. I was a bus boy. I did all sorts of things. I worked construction in the summer until I finally found my groove. That was after my first time getting out when I was enlisted. But I think
the Swiss Army knife.
I was like a Swiss Army knife. Unfortunately, it was a broken Swiss Army knife because I don't really think I solved any problems. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been doing construction jobs in Austin in August. It's really hot.
That sounds hot.
So let me ask you, and then we're going to go to commercial real quick. You get one book to recommend for transitioning service members that are getting out. What is that one book?
That's not fair. I mean, I do love. There's two that I have to recommend. So I do love the Thompson book, right? So the transition mission, or is it mission? I always forget. Here it is. So I'm gonna give you two of them right here. See. So we've got the transition mission from Herb Thompson, and I'm gonna give you Bill Kiefer's book, Military Career Transition. Hey, we have the same. So they're both really good. I can't pick one.
No, they're really good. We had Bill on the show, and what I loved about his book was being on the other side of the desk. And that kind of what we're talking about. What do they need? I know you need a job, but don't be so hungry. How are you solving their problem? Because they need a superstar. How are you going to be that superstar? How are you, as Donald Miller, our coach, says, how are you going to deliver 5 times the value of what they're paying you? If you can display that in your interview, it's gravy. You're coming in hot.
Make their job easy.
Right. Make it a no-brainer. I would have never hired James had I known this before.
Well, the beauty of it now, I know Lori, so she can help me write my resume.
You're fired.
Thank you.
But no, and Vardaman's got some great comments coming in. It's seeing how employers hire and how you can differentiate yourself. I mean, that's what's key. It's really what's your unique value proposition going in. It really is all marketing talk. Pick up a basic marketing book, and look at it that way. That's why we, dirty secret here, we offer free classes on how to create sales scripts that close. Oh, by the way, we give that same class to transitioning service members, because that sales scripts that close is also your elevator pitch. It's also how you're going to close the deal. What's their problem? How are you going to solve it? And how do you solidify that with a quick call to action in a networking event? And I think we can talk about that after the commercial break. But let's cut to commercial. And then what we'll do is we'll talk about, the networking events. How do you do that? And then more importantly, talk about your business. Let's talk about your podcast and what you're doing. So stay tuned.
You're watching the Lounge with Legends TV show with your hosts, Marty Martinez and James A. Feltz.
I think James is messing with the switchboard today because
somebody might need to be working on his resume. Just saying.
I'm telling you, I think Nick is right. I may have to update my LinkedIn profile because I will no longer be the host of the show here. So, all right. So before, if just tuning in, we have Lori Norris, Lessons Learned podcast, right? And it's really focused on transition, not necessarily just transitioning service member, but people that are transitioning and getting out and your story. But let's talk about that. Let's talk about, we talked about the resume and the challenges. What are the services that you offer, and tell us about your podcast?
So, I've been volunteering out at Luke. When in 2013, when the Department of Labor took over the TAP program, they said, well, you can't volunteer anymore. I'm like, well, I really like doing this. So I decided I would just go get a job and be their TAP instructor. And I really didn't have the time to teach full time in the classroom, 6 days a month, just because I was also running a business. But I really wanted to be able to do it. And sometimes I felt like I would go in there and I would unhinge my brain and dump it on everyone. And here's everything I know about the transition, right? So I had people kind of liken it to drinking from a fire hose. And so I finally left teaching full-time there in the Department of Labor program in 2016. And I was looking for a way to continue giving my knowledge that I have about transition to veterans. And so I thought about it for a while. And I finally, in 2020, I had some free time on my hands. And so decided to launch a podcast. And so I would be talking to veterans who had kind of made it through that transition, people who, I'd known for several years, and they're like, oh, I learned this and I learned this. And I was like, you have to share that with people. I think that could be really beneficial to those that are following behind you. And so I just decided to give them a place to share the wisdom. And so I host the podcast. I have veterans who served 2 years. I have veterans who served 32 years. I have officers, enlisted, every branch of the military. I'm still working on my first Coast Guard, but I know exactly who it's going to be. I just have to coordinate with them. But so every branch, try to have them represented. And I basically just ask them about their transition. Where did they struggle? Where did they stumble? What were the keys to their success? And we just tell the story of what they experienced. So, and it's one of those things where I get to give you some of my knowledge in little bite-sized chunks, so it's not so overwhelming. Right. I also do episodes where I have service members who are in the midst of their transition, and they come on and ask me 4 or 5 questions. And so those are the ones where I talk more. And so that's really what the podcast is all about. It's there for guidance and information. And what I try to do is give you actionable advice, things that you can do, put into place at the end of every episode. Like you can say, okay, I'm going to be better prepared now. And that's really the whole purpose of it, is just to help better prepare you for what's coming next.
I really love. I just put it in the comments. Check it out. Give her a like and subscribe. It doesn't cost you anything except a couple of clicks, and it really helps out us podcasters in our show, especially when you like the content. You can like, subscribe, and leave that comment. But some of the topics here are amazing. The backwards planning for year transition, common military transition lessons learned, learning military transition data. I'll have to check that one out. I haven't seen that one yet. Clearing up the resume myths, exploring sales as a career, 2 sides of the military. I mean, these are really great topics, and they hit at struggles that we have when we ask, what am I going to be when I grow up? How does this work? And it's not just resume writing. I mean, you're hitting like a lot of different topics here.
Yes.
What's your advice for, there you have imposter syndrome. What's your advice for the dreaded networking conference or job fairs?
So I think that, there are people, like, I'm actually a very introverted person, so I could get up and talk in front of hundreds of people about a subject that I know, but send me to a party or a networking event, and it's like, ooh, that's no thank you. I don't believe that about you, James, by the way.
It's true, I promise.
But nobody believes it about me either, but I'm with you. So I think that, going in with a plan of what you want to talk about and the kinds of people that you want to try to talk to will help you navigate that process a little easier. I know you guys talked about your elevator pitch. And, we don't typically walk up to someone and go, hi, my name is Lori Norris. I am a bilingual translator. I don't speak a foreign language, but I speak the language of the U.S. military. Like, I just gave you the first few lines of my elevator pitch, right? So that's not how we're going to do it. But like, if you have that prepared, then when someone says, oh, what do you do? Then you can use, you can like work it into your conversation. So having that elevator pitch prepared, it will allow you to kind of like pull from the information that you've already set aside, like that you want to talk about. So have a plan, and then, but also go into there with no expectations, right? So you go in with no expectations, you can't be disappointed, right? Thanks to MJ from Spider-Man. She taught us that. And so, but it's like, I'm just going to go and see what happens. I'm going to keep an open mind. I am going to meet new people. I'm going to try new things. We got to get out of our comfort zone to go to those. And so those are like the biggest things I would talk to people about to prepare.
Those are amazing. The 3 Ps you just said: plan, prepare, process, right? Those are the 3 things that Marty and I always talk about. If you don't have a plan, then what are you going in there for? You got to, I think, Marty, what do you say? On purpose, with purpose? Isn't that what you always say? So
you got to show up on purpose, with purpose.
Yeah.
And that's how you activate your hustle, is by knowing, planning, preparing, and process. And I like what you're talking about with the elevator pitch, because you got to know your elevator pitch. You got to know your worth. You got to know how you're going to enter to that conversation. And if you know it well enough, and we meet Lori here at a networking event, she finds out we're transitioning service members. We ask here in DC the question, what do you do? Then she can say, well, you know how transitioning military members struggle with translating what they did in the military to what goes in the civilian world? Yeah, that's what I do. I translate. And now she can go into her spiel because she got the first, that's right. Yes. She's going after, that's right. Yes, there's 3 yeses in negotiations, and everything's a negotiation. Chris Voss never split the difference. And that's what you're going after, is getting to that point where they're like, yes. Or as Dan Pink says, entering the conversation that's already occurring in their mind. So I love that. I love that you have, you're setting people on those paths. And that's something that it's not a one and done. You got to keep evaluating it, right? And so what do you do with all the business cards? Because they don't have a CRM. James and I have a CRM. After we're done, we scan it. It's in there. Put them in a workflow. HubSpot does the rest. What do these service members that are getting out? What do they do with all the business cards they collect?
So, first of all, go home and connect with them on LinkedIn, right? So, and some people may not know this, but LinkedIn actually has a feature. Let me see if I can pull it up.
I'm taking
in
notes.
on your page of LinkedIn. There's a little QR code where you can just hold it up, and you can scan each other's QR codes. And I can't get it pulled up, but so you can scan each other's QR codes and be connected right there. And so, I mean, I'm not sure how many business cards you're actually going to get, because I just don't. We're just not a paper society much anymore. But go there with a completed LinkedIn profile, so you can make those connections. I can't even tell you the last time I gave out a business card.
This is from my last event a few weeks ago. I'm still getting business cards.
You're still getting them. So yeah, I don't give them out anymore, but it's probably because I'm so focused on LinkedIn. But connect on LinkedIn and then start a conversation, right? And not a conversation that starts with, hey, can you help me get a job? Not that, right? But, can you spend 15 minutes on the phone so I can ask you some questions about your industry? I would love to hear more about your journey and how you got to where you are in your company. Can I, buy a cup of virtual coffee? Or, if you're in the same city, you can hang out for 15 minutes at a coffee shop. So just start building that connection, that relationship, and having a conversation with them.
Right. No, and it's not that different from sales, where it's in the real world. When we're face to face, I'm not going to walk up to you and go, hey, buy this product. Hey, buy me. I'm the product. You wouldn't do that. But for some reason, when we're online, we think that's okay. And it's kind of creepy and salesy. So how do you start that? And I think you hit on a great point. It's great to connect with people on LinkedIn at these conferences. So what? What's your next step? What's your in-state +1, as we said in the military? Know your in-state. I want to get some valuable connections at this conference. The +1 is, what's my follow-up plan? Have you already written them out like a template so that you can almost Mad Lib it and then customize it to those 15 people you got? It saves you some work, and then you can go, hey, Lori, it was great talking. I want to know more about hopefully you've taken notes on the back of the business card, if you still get business cards, and say, I want to learn more about your podcast, blah, blah, blah. How do I get on your show? Can you connect me with so-and-so on your show? Whatever it is, but know what that is. No, that's awesome. This hour has gone by so fast, and I really appreciate your perspective, because, again, James and I focus on the mindset of it and the marketing of it, and you're doing the real hard work over there, working with the resumes and going, no, that's not going to work. No, you cannot be the CEO of Coca-Cola because you were a battalion commander. It's not going to work.
But worse, I need to. Lori, when are you writing your book?
What's that?
When are you writing your book?
Well, that's it's some thought. It's something that I have thought about. That's a great question. I don't know. Maybe if someone wants to come and, throw a book proposal my way, I have ideas. So
we'll talk after the show.
All right.
All right. Well, what I want to do is I want to turn it over to since we're at the top of the hour, and ask you, Lori, you have done so much for our country, for our service members that have gotten out. And because of this, we're going to ask you, what does freedom mean to you?
I would say that freedom to me means sacrifice. Freedom is a byproduct of sacrifice. And I think, we know that there has been a lot of sacrifice from our service members to achieve the freedom of our nation. But even in our everyday lives, the freedoms that we enjoy take sacrifices from us. I started my business, as I told you, because I wanted the freedom to be around my children and raise them. And that took sacrifice. And so just realize that the sacrifices that you make in your life every day will lead to greater freedom, whether it be for you or for those that you love around you. And that's really what freedom means to me.
No, I love that. I think you're a great example of that. You sacrificed your time by volunteering early on at Luke Air Force Base, and it's paid dividends. Now you've got an amazing podcast and business, and so it really does mean a lot. And I thank you for all you've done and for your sacrifice. It's amazing getting to know you, and definitely looking forward to pushing everybody your way that's looking for these services.
I appreciate that. And we neglected to talk channel, but I would love for you to check that out too. We always do a bonus question of the podcast. So come and check out our YouTube channel so that you can get even more information about the transition process.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, the link is in the description for this episode. It's on there. Click on it, and this will be up on YouTube in about 1 hour. So awesome. And again, I thank you for being our legend this week. It's been absolutely amazing. Such a wealth of knowledge. So thanks.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. James, you have any parting? Nope. Okay.
No, just thanks for being our legend.
All right.
Happy to be.
So, James, that was absolutely amazing, and just as we expected.
That time flew by, man. That time
I know.
flew by so fast.
But so next week we have John McCaskill, U.S. Navy SEAL. We're going to talk about his podcast, which is oh my gosh, I shouldn't say anything now. I forgot it. Mindfulness for Men, and absolutely amazing. And then we're going to talk about this race he's got going on with another Army guy. So definitely go Army, beat Navy. The showdown is taking place 70.3 half Ironman in Waco, Texas. We're definitely going to find out about this and how you can support the Navy or the Army or both. But it's going to a great cause. We appreciate them all coming on. But go ahead, James.
No, I was just, I'm still, kind of taking in all the information that Lori was able to give us, and, like Marty said, and Lori, please like and subscribe to her channel, both on LinkedIn, Facebook, or not Facebook, but YouTube, and watch the 85. She has over 85 episodes of just so much knowledge, right, and just so much, talking about the stumbles and the success. Make sure you support her, because she's just a great illustration of, I always said this, and my intern introduced this to me, was service doesn't end with a contract. Well, Lori's a great example of service doesn't begin or end with a contract. Right. So I like that.
Absolutely. I'm excited, and we're going to go catch her in the green room, but stay tuned. We'll see you next week. And if you, we could check out our new LinkedIn videos we're putting out for JTF 214. We're talking our leadership series, lessons learned from famous leaders. We just posted Eisenhower. I think we got Abraham Lincoln, Margaret Thatcher, Warren Buffett, Steve Jobs, and others coming at you. And we'll see you next week. Thanks, and be legendary.
Airborne.
You've been watching the Lounge with Legends show, countering the narrative that veterans are all broken misfit toys. Veterans are the lifeblood of American freedom. Serving in harsh situations, coupled with their training, have forged them into some of the most resilient and capable leaders in the world. And that's where we come in, celebrating the success stories, taking you on a journey of transformation from military to business. We hope you enjoyed the show, and we'll be back soon. But find us on Facebook at Lounge with Legend or at JTF 214. Till next time.